And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tuesday morning starts off with IFR up here along the Arctic coast. Big area IFR continues out over the Bering Sea, along the Aleutians, and then some IFR also on the south shore of the Alaska Peninsula up to southern Kodiak Island, covering the Gulf of Alaska here right up to the north coast of the Panhandle, and some of that along the North Gulf Coast slipping in toward and around Montague Island. VFR in the interior. VFR for the Chukchi Sea down into St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island, eastward through all of interior Alaska for Tuesday afternoon. Could be some areas of marginal VFR, southern Cook Inlet, down around Kodiak Island, up along the North Gulf Coast, and still some IFR here off the north coast of the Panhandle and quite close to Yakutat. Not much change out west, pretty good area of IFR covering the Bering Sea and most of the Aleutians. And that doesn't change much into Wednesday morning as well. Still lots of IFR out here to the west, with IFR now a little bit more in over the Alaska Peninsula, especially the western areas there, but breaking out to VFR to the Aleutian Range, Bristol Bay. Marginal VFR along the coast all the way around Kodiak, Fognak Island, some of that slipping up into Cook Inlet. Otherwise, VFR interior out to the Arctic coast and beyond a little bit there. IFR back up just off the North Gulf Coast here into Montague Island again. Marginal VFR for the Panhandle, but looks like Haines to Skagway, VFR. And then areas of VFR over the southeast coast on the inside waters for the afternoon Wednesday. IFR now pulling off the coast all the way around about Kodiak Island there. Maybe some IFR just off the east side, but VFR over the interior. Again, Cook Inlet northward to the Arctic Ocean, good VFR. St. Lawrence Island. IFR now pushing into the southwest coast and up into Bristol Bay, and still covering a good portion of the Aleutians and Bering Sea. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, VFR for the day on Tuesday for both passes there, Lake Clark and Merrill. VFR for rainy and windy, looking good, VFR as well. All the Alaska range looking pretty good tomorrow with VFR for all the passes listed here. Tanita, same forecast, VFR. Portage starting out marginal, becoming VFR. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. And for the freezing levels here, about 12,000 feet over the interior areas, and then about anywhere from 12 to 8,000 feet over the Panhandle, some cooler air down to the south. And then 6,000 feet with low pressure out here over the southwest Bering Sea. And from there, looking at icing, and that low center pushing some considerable moderate rime icing up across the central Aleutians into the southern Bering Sea tomorrow. Otherwise, the only other area of significance, icing-wise, would be here over the Panhandle. Isolated moderate to considerable moderate rime icing there, almost up to about Yakutat. And the jet stream showing low pressure aloft at this elevation, so that pulling southeasterly flow 75 knots here into the Kenai Peninsula, and offshore northeast winds 95 knots blowing across the southern southeast coast, and then big low pressure here out over the western Bering Sea, and some 85 knot southerly winds there into the central Bering Sea there on the eastern quadrant of that system. 9,000 feet, showing a couple of wind maxes out here over the Bering Sea, one right through this area here, southeast 35 to 40 knots, and then another one in closer to the low center, west turning south at 40 to 45 knots there. Pretty light with high pressure over the interior. And for the southeast coast, not too bad, low pressure there near Dixon Entrance. And the stronger winds at this elevation, more up to the north here, 35 knots coming into the eastern Copper River Basin. And for 3,000 feet, swinging around west-northwest, 35 knots there for the Gulf of Alaska, much lighter as they reach the northern Panhandle. High pressure here over the western part of the state has some 35-knot winds out of the west blowing across the Chukchi Sea there, barely reaching the western Arctic coast, and then some 25 to 30-knot winds with the system out to the west. So with those 30-knot winds, throwing some isolated moderate turbulence, Adak and Atka, and then with the winds up over the Chukchi Sea, possible isolated moderate turbulence surface to 4,000 feet there. And for the northern panhandle, looking at isolated moderate mechanical turbulence there with some gusty southerly winds, Stevens Passage up into Lynn Canal.